words of the Gospel of Luke that have been preserved by the church and handed down to us through the centuries for our hearing, our understanding, and our discussion this morning. Jesus went on teaching from town to village, village to town, but keeping on a steady course toward Jerusalem. A bystander said, "Teacher, will only a few be saved?" Jesus said, "Whether few or many is none of your business. Put your mind on your life with God. The way to life, to God, is vigorous and requires your total attention. A lot of you are going to assume that you'll sit down to God's salvation banquet just because you've been hanging around the neighborhood all your lives. Well, one day, you're going to be banging on the door wanting to get in, but you'll find the door locked. And the owner of the home saying, 'Sorry, you're not on my guest list.' You'll protest, 'But we've known you all our lives,' only to be interrupted with this abrupt, 'Your kind of knowing can hardly be called knowing. You don't know the first thing about me.' That's when you find yourselves out in the cold, strangers to grace. You watch Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all the prophets march to God's beloved community. You watch outsiders streaming from east, west, north, and south, and sit down at the table of God's beloved community. And all the time you'll be outside looking in and wondering what happened. This is the great reversal. The last in line put at the head of the line, and the so-called first ending up last." Just then some Pharisees came up and said, "Run for your life. Herod's on the hunt. He's out to kill you." Jesus said, "Tell that fox that I have no time for him right now. Today and tomorrow I'm busy clearing out the demons and healing the sick. The third day I'm wrapping things up. Besides, it's not proper for a prophet to come to a bad end outside Jerusalem." Jerusalem, Jerusalem, killer of prophets, abuser of the messages of God. How often I've longed to gather your children like a hen, her brood safe under her wings. But you refused and turned away. And now it's too late. You won't see me again until the day you say, "Blessed is the one who comes in the name of God." This is the gospel of Christ.
Praise Christ the Word.
It's an unusual lesson. And I was watching people after I finished reading the speaker about these and saying, "Nice, but what does that have to do with anything we're going to use?" One of the things that you may not know, but this is a good crossword puzzle thing to know, is that the group of bees in a hive that's supported by the queen is called what? Does anybody know? I know you know, you can say. Not a colony, you would think, right? The queen refers to her group of people, a group of bees gathered together as what?
Army. Army?
Yes. Her brood. Her brood. A brood of bees. That's like a hive of lions. And there's a whole gackle geese, but there's a whole group of those that are really very interesting, how those terms come about and when you're talking about a collective. But it's a brood of bees. And Suman Kidd uses this as her way of talking about the care that the community she grew up in, how it nurtured her, and as a metaphor for how she understands the way that God nurtures us. The same way as Jesus puts it in this gospel this morning, it's one of the few representations of God as female in the New Testament about God gathers the children like a hen, her brood safe under her wings. That's referring to God. It's a very old hymn. In fact, I set it apart here to show you that it is a hymn. It is a hymn that predates the Gospels. So you've seen lately there's a lot of hymns that have been coming up in the readings, and I wanted to point that out to you. And I think that Suman Kidd's vision, her writing is just superb. It really is. Are you familiar with this, The Secret Life of Bees? It's a great book if you have a chance to read it. I'm trying to find the passages I want. I read almost the whole book. But it's really very, very good. It's even a good book. It's a good book to read aloud. It's a good book to get on tape. But it's really good to read aloud to your children or to a group gathered. And it really, really is very, very, very theological. It's wonderful theology, wonderfully written. And I think it bears looking at even closer. It might be fun to read next Lent, once we get past the sins of Scripture. Which, by the way, if any of you were not here on Tuesday, I made some excerpts, which I'll put up here on the piano, of what we read, if you don't have the book, and you can pick them up on the way to communion or back from communion. Talking about what the sins of Scripture are, and it's not what you might think, but what we talked about this past week was how it is that some things in Scripture are very, very, very hurtful. And it's not that we're looking at sins that people committed that are recorded in Scripture, like the fall and all that, but we're looking at how it is that Scripture itself has been sinful and that it has separated people from God by the very stories it tells. I think that this Summon Kid story is a wonderful reversal to that. It really shows a tight-knit community, a community that believes and talks about and uses words like the kingdom of God and sees the bees in the hive as the way that all works out and everything. It's just really, really good. I love the idea of the fact that the bees are in the jar, but they still won't leave, even though they can. I think that's a great metaphor for the many people in the church, or many people in relationships, period. We should leave, but we just don't always go out of the jar. Even when the jar is open, the lid's out, and there's somebody who's pushing you. Having once been captured in the jar, it's really hard to leave it, even though it's a prison. And we went there, or somebody captured us, or we went there thinking it was going to be all right, and it was soft and petally and all sorts of things like that. But when the jar gets tipped over, and all we really want to do is take flight, we still stay in the jar. It's a really very good metaphor, I think, also for our experience, many of us, of the church. Some people spent a long time in churches that were not comfortable for them and never left, even though there were so many things that were not really right. And so they have to ask themselves at some point, or somebody else might ask them, well, how come you stayed so long then? Well, I don't know. I got used to the pain, I guess, or I got used to the level of discomfort. And that road out there, I don't know what I was going to find. Sometimes, as you know, it's easier to stay with the pain you know than to go out and see what else might be out there. Jesus uses this type of thought in the Gospel of Luke, although it's probably put more of Luke's fault than Jesus, of how it is that the beloved community is. It doesn't say beloved community, I changed the words, it says kingdom of heaven. But that's the idea. The kingdom of heaven, in the kingdom of heaven, there's going to be a great reversal. I love Eugene Peterson's use of that. Really, what the Greek says, it talks about the paradox, the great paradox. And the great paradox is nothing is going to be exactly the way we thought it was. In fact, the more sure we are that it's going to be one way, the beloved community, the kingdom of heaven, is going to be whatever we thought, just the opposite. And the more we are sure of what it is, it's going to be just the opposite. Why? The theology of it is that God will not be limited to our thought process. For one thing. I think that's good. God will not be limited to our thought process. In the very first hymn that we sang, that was the last line of the first verse. That God has much more to do, and God's whole process has not been worked out yet. So we think that this is it, or this is the final story, or the only way that it's going to be. God cannot be limited by what we can think. That's why I say, in the communion service, in Christ, all things are possible. That doesn't mean in other people that they are impossible also. But my understanding of what the Christian religion is about, and the reason that I'm still a Christian and not something else, and there's the temptation to be something else, is very, very great many days, especially the more Christians you meet. I use that word in quotation marks. The temptation to go on is very, very great to something else. But the reason I'm still here and still preaching is because I believe that in what is put forth about the person that we call the Christ, everything is possible. The best thing I think that Paul ever wrote was, in Christ there is no male nor female, no Greek nor Jew, no slave nor free. And then I add my own to that. No black or white, no gay or straight. There are no divisions that divide us. There is only community, only union, like a beehive, if you will. And its best days, when people get together and they really work hard, there's a lot of sweetness, a lot of honey. Days that people fly away from the hive and go on their own ways may not be the best days. People may find that it's very, very difficult to be away from one's home, or people are testing all the time, trying to find out where they're going to be comfortable. But it's really nice to know that there's a place to come back to, and that everybody is welcome, even if they've been away for a long time. You know that some people don't come to church, and I know this is surprising. Some people don't come to church because they don't want to ask where they've been. Although we think we're doing a great thing by saying, "Oh, it's so good to see you, I haven't seen you in such a long time." The sense of guilt that people walk away with that many times is very, very great, and it keeps them from coming back. I've had that discussion with some of you along the way, I know. And our intentions are good. We want people, to be with us. But the message that the person often hears is, "Where have you been? It's about time you came back." Or that there was something wrong, that they weren't being with us when all the important things that we were about, and so forth. And so the church has to always be careful of that pride of inclusion. There's a pride about inclusion. As much as we want to be inclusive, there's always somebody that feels left out because of certain things that are not kosher for them at the moment. I'll give you an example. You may notice that I've gone to bigger type and more pages. For a long time, I was doing columns because the word that had gotten back to me was, "We're wasting so much paper, and it could be much better organized," and so forth. And I literally spent hours trying to put things in columns and make them fit and everything like that. And just recently, I've gone back just straight across. There are a few columns at the end. One of those reasons was because Paul said to me, I hope you don't mind me quoting Paul, "Church is the only place I go where I feel totally like I don't belong." Why is that? Because I can't read the type. The church wants to be inclusive, but what about people who are sight challenged? Can we go to bigger type? And so I've gone to bigger type, and also have been able to get the bulletin done early enough to get it to Paul so that he can blow it up into a larger size when he could see. But, I mean, gosh, all our efforts to be so inclusive, we're leaving people out. And I thought, all right, I want a bigger type. I don't care how many pages it goes to. At the end of the liturgy for today, I also put two things in there that I thought you might like to read. One is Bishop Sisco's response to what happened in Dar es Salaam, which is where all the primates of the Anglican Communion met. I'm beginning to understand the word primates in a whole different way. In order to talk about the future of the Anglican Communion. And if you haven't heard the word on this, I'll give you the inclusive version. And that is that the Anglican Communion, after the bishops, after having decided that and asking last year, could we just please take a break and put on the brakes and not ordain any more homosexual clergy as bishops? If we could do that, we could have a time of peace where everybody would agree not to do that, then maybe we could sit down at the table and talk about the future of the church. And so our bishops agreed to that. I felt they sold us out, really, sold me out as a gay person, and many other people sold the church out. But they were doing it in an attempt to try to be more inclusive and to try to stay within the community. So, at the meeting of the primates of the world in the Anglican Communion in Dar es Salaam last week, they got together and said, we saw that you did what you did, and you know what? It's not enough. It never was. We were just holding out on you, just testing you to see how far you would go. Now, if you are not willing to actually refuse to ordain any more gay persons, if you are not willing to take all persons who are ordained who are gay and depose them, get rid of their offices, tell them they can no longer be priests within the church, and if you are not going to put a notice out that gay people are not welcome in the Anglican Church, then we don't want to speak to you.
And was that passed? You say they put it out.
That's right.
Was it passed? I mean, was it?
That's what they said. That's what they came up with.
Oh, that was their final.
That was their final work.
Okay.
The church has not done enough. The Episcopal Church of the United States and in Canada especially has not been remorseful enough, nor has it done what it was asked to do. So I must tell you that, and I know that you've known Mark a long time, and you're proud to hear that when he was here last year, I mean, I told him before he came, I said, there are many people angry with you, because we really feel like you sold us. Well, this time he wrote, and you'll see it in there, a very, very important sentence. If you want to turn to the last page, I think it's worth pointing out. He said in the second paragraph toward, I want to add one important caveat. Over the years, I've been prepared to make certain accommodations to meet the concerns of those whose view of the gospel promises differs somewhat from my own. I'm fully aware that those accommodations have not been uncontroversial. Now, I want to make it abundantly clear that I'm not in the least prepared to make any concession that strikes at the heart of my conviction that gay and lesbian people are God's beloved children. They are we. That's a strong statement from a moderate bishop.
Yeah, but what did the presiding bishop do?
The presiding bishop is very disappointed.
Yes.
Her name is Catherine Jeffershiori. And what she came away saying, okay, we'll see what we can do. And people are very, very, very angry about that. And I think she's going to face a lot of opposition in the House of Bishops when they meet this week, and at General Convention when it meets 2 years from now. And just saying, you know, we elected you because we thought that as a woman who has suffered a lot in the church, even to get where you are, that you would understand what it's like for people to be left out of the process. And she has not risen to what I think are the heights that she's been called to. You've probably also heard this week about what was going on at Hesse restaurant in New Rochelle. You all read about that. You know where Hesse is? It's down in Piccadilly Shopping Center. The law of the Gay and Lesbian Center in White Plains put together a picture exhibit about marriage equality and showed who are our families, including taking pictures of, let's say in my case, if they were taking a picture of my family, they'd have my sister who lives with her boyfriend, that's a part of the family, my brother who's single, my sister who lives with her husband and 3 children, my family, Anthony and Lisa. They put them all together to show the families, a very wide and very diverse way of thinking. And they mounted this exhibit of 25 families that are very diverse from Westchester County and Rockland, and they, the committee organizer who put this together had the pictures up on the wall at Hesse restaurant. People went in and complained and wrote to the corporate office, and the loft got a message that the exhibit had to come down immediately. Immediately. And so the loft got people together and went there and protested outside the restaurant, or about to, and organized a writing campaign where people could write into the corporate office so they could use some different words. The response was so overwhelming that the corporate offices reversed themselves and decided that the exhibit should stay up. But the things that people said our neighbors in this neighborhood, and I knew some of those names that were put in the paper, the things they had to say about people who are our families and a part of our church family here were absolutely horrific. And I know the lies exist, but I keep on getting fooled each time, thinking that we've made such strides, and then you come up against it one more time. And so anyway, the protest turned instead to a celebration and a Thanksgiving for COSI Corporation, and then everybody that was there that day went in and had lunch to try to support COSI. It was very, very moving to read the whole story.
At the Warden's Conference yesterday, one of the meetings that I attended was that public voice option. What that was about was that they hired somebody that's going to help the bishop to be more visible in the media, on radio. He is in a couple of newspapers, etc. But to have more of a say. Now, one of the people mentioned about Cardinal O'Connor years ago, how representing the Catholic Church, he was in all the papers and he got the message across, and they said, we don't get our message across. What happens is that we're kind of, we're more to the left, but the right, it's all the, all the press. So that a lot, and especially our bishop, who tries to kind of take a middle path, that doesn't make good press. That's not what people are interested in. And one of the wardens said that there was that problem about Bishop Robinson. They had no priest at their church. So the newspaper called him and asked for a statement. And he said, well, there's no problem here. We're all comfortable about it. Well, then I said to the reporter, well, that is our story. You see, they're looking for something really.
Well, one of the reasons that Frank videos, and Frank has put up a new link, which I'll send to all of you in my online news this week, where you can actually see the video much clearer. But people are watching our services, even people who are not members of the congregation or don't even know it. It's being picked up various places, and Frank and I have been talking a lot with how it is that we can get our word out more. One of the reasons that Frank videos the service is not just because we love being on video, but because we are trying to focus to get the word out more. I don't know if you saw the article in the paper yesterday with the Grace Church, Baptist Church in Mount Vernon, that the guy there has found a way to really tap in, and he has this very wide audience is now watching from all over the United States. He's streamlining the services so that they're actually, people are watching this as he's actually preaching. In our case, we're recording and putting up. But don't underestimate the power of the internet to actually get the word across. So one of the reasons that we're doing this is based upon Krista Georgia's suggestion to me that we should be putting out our word also. And so it takes a little while, but the word is getting out that this is a safe place. This is a place where people can come and be welcome. And so we're working more and more on it.
Perhaps what we should start doing is each week send out the equivalent of a press release saying such and such was said on Sunday at St. John's, and to hear the full sermon, go to.
Yeah, it might be a good idea. Maybe you can talk to Frank about that, and we can find a way to do that. Yeah, Frank.
Another suggestion, we could talk at St. Francis Cottage more about it, but if anyone has a list of people they would like the video clip sent to, all you need to do is email me that list, and I'll take care of the emails out to your friends or relatives who want the link. So it makes it even easier for you. And I'll give you my email name at St. Francis's Cottage.
Well, in order to get back a little bit to the lessons for today, one of the things that happens in the first lesson, you'll notice the first lesson that Fran was reading, and Fran did very good with all those names at the end there. I've heard those names pronounced all different ways, in ways that are quite embarrassing actually, especially if you look at that word Hittite, and there's lots of different pronunciations of that. That was very good. You did very well with that, and also the fact that Tammy, that you got Philippians. I've had many occasions before in the past where the readers got that and said, "We're reading St. Paul's letter to the Philippines." If Paul was ever there, but it's one of those apocryphal texts, one of Not Hamadi text, I think, Philippines, Paul from the Philippines. But you'll notice in the first lesson this morning that the protagonist, the main character, is called who? Abram. How come not Abraham? Why is his name Abram here? Now that's not a typo, and that's not something I changed. It's not something Eugene Peterson did. The name here is actually Abram. First he was Abram, and then he became Abraham. How? God changed his name. In what way? And Sarah was called Sarai, S-A-R-A-I, in the early versions. But they have a name change. They get a name change. Why? What does the name change signify? Yeah, their name changes before she gets pregnant, which is what I should. But the promise, once God makes the promise to Abraham, to Abram, it's not immediately, but soon after, there's a new relationship that comes about, and it is meant to show this new relationship. Just like Paul's original name was Saul, and it got changed to Paul. The whole idea was to show that in changing the name, that there is a change in thinking, a change in venue also. They're going to go into a new land. But there's a way, something has happened. There's a new naming. And one of the things that Luke tries to show in his gospel this morning is the way that there's going to be a change. There's going to be this reversal, the great reversal. So let's get back to the great reversal for a second. The paradox. I thought about the paradox a lot when I was thinking about what happened. And just when you think it's safe to go back in the water, you find it's not safe to go back in the water. Just when you think that you really beaten down some of the walls of prejudice, they come up and smack you from behind the head because you weren't looking behind you. And in the beloved community, in the way that Jesus preached it or Luke envisioned it, it was going to be very, very different. And you can see, though, and I should be able to understand this, I don't know why I don't remember it, how it is that this prejudice, this bias comes about and we're not even ready for it. And that's because we're still the bees in the jar. We still stay within the jar, even though we should be venturing maybe further and further away outside the jar. And because we're still in the jar, the things that are in the jar with us have equal opportunity to interact with the rest of the universe. All that to say was that when we least expected, because of this role reversal, things might come up and surprise us. And that's because the first will be last and the last will be first. That's very comforting to the people that are last, but it's not comforting to the people who thought they were first. And people are not going to give up their seat on the subway to somebody who doesn't look like they need it. And even if they do need it, they're not going to give up their seat on the subway. I was talking to Paul and Peter this morning as we were coming to church about years ago when I had my feet operated on. I was in a wheelchair for a year, almost. And I was doing services from up here in my church at that time, St. Andrews. And I just got out of the hospital, and it was my first Sunday doing the service. I just felt a lot of pain because they cut all the bones going across the tops of both feet and didn't reconnect them. It was a birth defect, but it wasn't called until I was 30. And so I decided I needed to be at church. I needed to be present. I needed to do the service. And so I was in the wheelchair. I was handing up communion. People wouldn't come up. They were getting spooked now. They didn't like it. And the kid said, "It's creepy. He's creepy." Why is that? Because he's in a wheelchair. Well, yeah, I know he's hurt and he's sick. I know, but Mommy, I want to go up. And a lot of daddies didn't come up either. A lot of people wouldn't come up for communion for weeks. Here I thought, here's an opportunity for me to preach, okay, the brokenness of Christ, the world, and how the pain, and God understands our pain and suffering. You know what? People don't want to hear that. And they don't want to see it. They don't want to see the broken world. They want to see the pretty things. And if church isn't pretty, and if our lives aren't pretty, and if our experiences aren't pretty, then nobody wants to hear it, really. For all the compassion and all that, after a while, it gets depressing. I saw Ray Falk in the hospital yesterday. I can tell you, last week, I might have said in the service that his wife had been called, and this is it, you know, you need to go home and make arrangements. And by the time we got to the hospital, he was sitting up in bed, and he's coming home tomorrow. Joanne told me, she said, that man will fool you. Don't you write him off yet. And she was right, because he has come back from the dead about 10 times already. And when I was sitting with him yesterday, and he was musing on it, he said, I said, well, Ray, what happened? I mean, he said, I got to thinking about all the people that have been calling Chris and his wife, and she's got friends, and she could probably get along should I go, you know. But he said, you know what? I wanted to have a chance to have some of those friends too. I never have. I've never met a community like the people of St. John's. Where they don't even. I got cards and letters. Fran told Chris told me that from people, and she had to tell me who they were, and I still don't know who they are. And he said, so I'm really glad to see you today, and please tell the people when you go to church that I hope to be back soon. I said, well, I planned that. I put you on the reader schedule for a week after Easter. I did. You all got all your schedules in the mail this week, and so I put them on there. You know, he said, well, that was a great act of faith. I said, well, no, that's called long-term planning. And I really want him to be here. He really wants to be here to do that. He wasn't ready to go yet. He just wasn't, because he says he hasn't had the experience that he wants to have yet of community. He's never been able to find it anywhere. And I thought that's really, really nice to hear. But it also said to me, A, how important the little things that we do are, that we may not find to be important, like jumping a car to somebody, whatever, making a phone call. But also, it just also reminded me how much more we can do. And the opportunities are always there, even if it's just one-on-one with one person, your neighbor or whoever it is. And that's what makes the breaking through of the beloved community possible. One of the mistakes that the church has made for a long time is preach the idea of the kingdom of heaven, or the beloved community, I'm calling it, as some future reality. Maybe in the next life, people say, well, I'm not willing to wait for the next life. I want it to be different now. And I want those little pieces to break through now. I'm not willing to let what happened in Kosi happen again. I want the kingdom to break through now. I'm not willing to let what happened in Dar es Salaam keep happening. I want my bishop to stand up for me now. And I wrote to him and said, let me tell you, because I criticized him greatly at convention. I stood up, and I think David told you, that I stood up and I said, you know, you all are on a slippery slide here, because it won't be long before they come knocking on your door and deciding you can't come to church. Because you're divorced. Because your daughter is gay. Because you've been married 3 times. You look at the presidential candidates, look at some of these things that some of these people are going to be up against. You heard Ann Coulter's tirade this week. You haven't. It's worth looking into, and what she had to say, criticizing John Edwards. But you know, everybody's going to be up against it at some point, and people have to realize that unless we all stand up and say we will not put up with this any longer, because this is not our vision of the beloved community. Unless people are willing to do that, then it will always come back and smack us from behind the head when we're least thinking of it.
Go back a few thoughts.
To what? I'm sorry?
Go back a few thoughts to the what you were saying about when you were in a wheelchair, and Jesus didn't avoid people who were sick. And in fact, he went out of his way to accommodate them. And I guess I don't understand why it is that, I mean, as a community, it's easy to send a card, but it's difficult to put aside our own needs when they conflict with the needs of other people who are not feeling as well as we are. And why is that? Why as a community are we unable to do that?
Well, I think for one reason, it's like singing. Eric will tell you that a lot of, there's no such thing as tone deafness, for instance. You might say that some people are tone deaf, and if you ever stood next to some of them, you may be sure of it. But there really isn't. It's just the fact that those muscles have never been developed, that they've never been used in the right way. People haven't learned how to breathe the correct way. They've never have used those muscles and brought them up in order to match pitch. But everybody can sing on pitch once they learn how to do it. Once you use those muscles. And I think that part of the problem is that people have never used those muscles. They've never had that experience. And they don't know how to do it. So it has to be modeled for them somehow.
But even, all right, how does one do that? Because
How does one model it?
because
By doing it.
there are models, there are people who are modeling it, and yet it doesn't.
Well, it's nothing, it's a slow process. But there's nothing better than just doing it yourself. I haven't been feeling well in the last couple months, as many of you know, and one of the things I've been trying to do in not feeling well is I get on the phone and start to talk to people who are not feeling well. And I've called quite a few of you in the last bit of time when I was feeling just absolutely at my worst, really. Not because then say, well, how are you doing? So, but anyway, that's why I'm calling. And it really isn't, because I found that one of the best ways to feel better, not because other people are saying I can one-up that on you, It's just to put myself out there. And so that's not the model that I grew up with. But I'm trying to see, and I do believe it is true, that in really getting out of yourself, you actually take some of that illness out of you also. You actually become whole, I'm more whole, because you have the experience of other people who are also lifting you up, just by having interaction. For those of you who have been on Mimi's email list, she's been in New Zealand, she went to see John of God, the world-renowned healer, and some other healers there. And one of the things that she has been discovering in the whole process is how both strong she is and how weak she was, and thinking that she was not strong. That everything that we need, and really to lift ourselves up in the community, is really right at our fingertips. But we just have never exercised those particular muscles. We have just not done it. And I think that we have to keep modeling it. And the best way is not to say, why are not other people doing it? The best thing is to get us to do it ourselves. Stop asking the question, why are not other people doing it, and do it ourselves. That's really what we're called to do. And that's how the local community actually breaks through in ways.
I mean, if it's a matter of exercise, if you want to put it that
It
way,
is.
then as any sports team needs a strong coach, and then the community needs a strong coach, right? Jesus he didn't tolerate any of the, he spoke out to his disciples when they were doing things that he didn't think were appropriate.
Sometimes. He does say to them, he's very disappointed at times. He says, could you not stay awake with me 1 hour? But he doesn't say, okay, now everybody up. He has a different way of dealing with it. It's tough. But I think that really what it has to be anyway is that it's not the responsibility of the leader in order to inculcate in the people who are being led what it is that they need. The only thing that a leader can do, I think, sometimes is give people a different name, call them forth in a different way, give them a different way to get to it sometimes by renaming it, or by reworking it or whatever, but it all has to come from the people themselves. And if people are not open to it, it won't happen at all anyway. One of the things that really has to happen in the beloved community is people have to be open to a wide variety of experiences. And until they are, then they'll never get up and do anything else for anyone else. Rob, you had something you want to say? Anything you want to say?
Oh, I guess a couple things. One was just your remark about Ann Coulson, and that it was worth looking at what she had to say. I disagree with that. I mean, people like her are just looking for an audience. So if you disagree or find her repulsive, then the best thing to do is to ignore her.
Maybe.
It's just like I haven't watched this State of the Union address in 6 years. So it's because I know what the State of the Union is. But so I wouldn't even give her the time of day. I would turn her off because I know where she's coming from. And unless she said to me, the most amazing thing happened today, she's reversed all of her bigotry and all of her hatred and everything else. And I think, and the cozy thing, for example, I think that restaurants should now be really embraced, or corporate headquarters should be embraced, because they recognize that what they did was, it was a mistake. And the only other thing I was going to say is, I welcome your phone calls, but I often sometimes think that when I want to call somebody, I don't want to, when I feel like I could really use somebody to talk to, I don't want to burden them. So it's almost thinking it would be interesting to have a telephone chain, almost like a support type of thing. People say if you need somebody to talk to, the following people have said, pick up the phone and call me.
You have a parish directory, and I don't know that there's anybody that can say that they don't want to talk to you. But it's hard to know that until you do it. And I'll speak for them because I've spoken to them, and I know that's true. I know that's true because everybody here knows what it's like to want to talk to somebody else. I can remember we saw Edie and John Blass last week, and I can remember very, very clearly the day that Kate Taylor sat here with her mother, Beverly, who had just been shot by her husband 7 times. You remember Kate was really, really ticked off because we were talking about, I don't know, what she thought were platitudes about being nice and all that, and about pain and suffering. And she said, hold on a minute. Nobody's been through the suffering that my mother has been through. She was shot 7 times by my father. And Gita put her hand on her and said, dear, we all have had experiences that are really very painful and stand. Kate just shrugged it off. Really, take it off. So I said to Kate afterwards, I said, do you know who that was who kind of Jeffy on the shoulder? She said, I have no idea. Whoever it was, she was very insensitive. She didn't understand what's problem at all. I said, that was Gita Blass. The reason that Gita and John come to church is because their 18-year-old daughter committed suicide and never left you note. So when she put her hand on your shoulder and told you that she understood your pain, she was trying to reach out to you. So you never know who it is who's trying to be in your directory. And she was willing to do that. I think that's very, very powerful. And that changed the way that Kate thought and Beverly thought after that. Beverly said, this is the church I want to stay in. But she didn't know that. She didn't know that. And the reason she was coming here, Beverly was coming here, was that when she got shot, because her husband was a deacon in the Roman Catholic Church, they would not go visit her at the hospital. They stood up and they wouldn't even go visit her. And I went to see her because she was the niece of one of our members at the time. The niece got on the phone with me and said, and the aunt, said, can you believe this? Would you come and see my aunt? I said, sure. So I did, and that's what she said. When I get out of the hospital, if I live, I'm going to your church. And she did. She still writes just about every week. Isn't the same. I'm going to end it from this point.
I wanted to go back to the fact when you were sitting up there in a wheelchair, nobody would come to you. Because I had a similar experience about that. But I think it's because people focus on that one particular spot and are very uncomfortable with that. And I think it only changes when you talk to them and they suddenly see you again as a whole person and not this poor person who sits in a wheelchair. It changes the focus of people and then they can talk again. And the uneasiness is taken away. And I think when you feel bad and you actually reach out to people, you don't want to burden them with your feeling bad. It is just a way of changing the focus of these people, saying, I'm still a person, even though my feet hurt, and I still have other issues, and we can talk about that.
Well, I love it when people come to me and they sort of, Father, can I talk to you short? You've never heard anything like this, and I'm like, you know, there isn't. There isn't anything I don't think I haven't heard. I mean, every once in a while, I do get a little bit surprised, but after 25 years, I'm going to be doing 25 years this year, I can tell you, I've heard some things that would make people's hair stand up and then sit right back down again. And I think that's why therapy, for instance, group therapy actually works, I think, because the thing that is, and I think this goes back to your question and also your response, and goes to the heart of what you were saying. Although we want to think of ourselves as unique, we are all human beings. And there isn't anything that all of us have not experienced at some time. We don't even know that other people have experienced that because we've never shared that. We never shared that part of ourselves. But I can tell you as a priest in a community for a long time, how much the things that people go through every day, other people that I know in this community are going through the same thing, but I can't say anything because of confidentiality or whatever. Sometimes I can set people up and say, you know, you should really talk to somebody or whatever. But let me tell you, there is, as unique as we are very, very much the same. And because we don't know that, because we're still trying to hold on to our uniqueness, because it's our uniqueness that let us get this far in the first place, when we were feeling so bad about how everybody was treating us within this world. We're not willing to go back and not be unique anymore. We're not willing to go back into the group where we can get hurt, because we're not unique, in order to try to find new uniqueness or a community point of view. Yeah.
I think people are afraid to be leaders. People are more comfortable being followers, and yet, and the word leader, people, oh, I don't want to be a leader, but you can be a leader in a very small way. In your family, be a leader. People that need being a leader by being kinder, or in a small way you can be a leader. I think people are afraid, oh, I don't want to be a leader.
Well, that's one of the songs I'm working on right now is a song called "And Jesus Wept," and the one I'm working on right now is "God Send Us a Leader." It's called. So I agree with you. I think it's very, very important.
The Holocaust service, which comes every April, and is now going to have its 13th year anniversary, and was initiated in the communities right around here, used the theme, Be an Upstander, last year. It was so successful, and it reached the young people with such power and with such dynamic energy that this year they're going to use the theme, It Starts With One. And I think this gets to the point of your comment that we need to do just one little thing to be more of a leader than we were the day before. And maybe that's the action that we can all take upon ourselves during Lent, which is out on the board. I saw when I came here that in Lent, do one good thing for someone else. And maybe being an upstander or letting it begin with yourself is a way to grow into action our Christianity.
I hope as we get into the rest of the service today, to look at the words of the Eucharist and understand, maybe for the first time, or in a different way for the first time, what those words mean. Because we talk, that's what we say every week. We say that, each small flame is as important as another. And we were given strange tools for such a challenge. But the challenge is, and I was talking to somebody this week, the tools are, I think it is wonderful that we have the cup and we have the bread as our symbols of the fact that every single person is welcome. No one will be denied that at all. And that is a really good start. So if you just take the words, listen to the words today as we get into them, and try to understand their meaning, and try to even to share that with someone else. Show them, take it home with them. I did the liturgy today as a take home. Because there's also a very good article on the back page, which is from Biblical Archaeology Review, which would be very helpful to you, especially those people who have asked me about these recent ossuary finds and James Cameron's special about the family of Jesus and finding the bones and all that. Some interesting things that are going on at the moment. So take it home with you, and I hope you'll read this and give me some feedback as we go along.